The shuttle's docking clamps bit into the hull with a groan that vibrated through the cabin. Mara sat strapped in the pilot's chair, helmet cradled in her lap, listening to the sound as if it were a heartbeat. The old ship's metal was tired, like bones flexing after too many years left in the cold. She released the straps slowly, fingers stiff, then drew in a breath that tasted of recycled air and nerves. 21 years. She thought she had buried the Kestrel's wake with her parents, but the coordinates came to her from a back-channel whisper, a rumor traded for too many credits, and here she was, staring at a ghost made of steel. The console blinked confirmation, lock secure. She stood, helmet snapping into place, and crossed to the hatch. The boarding tunnel extended with a hiss, magnets locking to the freighter's skin. She could feel the age of the vessel in the silence between sounds, the absence of life support. Beyond that hatch was emptiness preserved, an airless tomb. She palmed the release, and the door opened with a reluctant sigh. The freighter's corridor stretched beyond the threshold, dark and frost-rimed. Her helmet lamp cast a narrow beam, picking out flakes of ice suspended like dust motes. They spun lazily, stirred by the faint current of her entry. She stepped inside, boots clanging on the deck, the sound too loud, too real. Every surface was familiar in a way that struck deeper than memory. She had been a child here, running down these same corridors, the hum of the engines a constant lullaby. Now the engines were dead, and her light turned the place into a skeletal reflection of her past. She brushed gloved fingers against a bulkhead as she walked. The texture, the grooves in the plating, were unchanged. Time had taken everything but this. Her path took her through the crew commons. Chairs lay scattered, a cup frozen mid-fall where spilled liquid had crystallized into a fan of brittle lace. A half-played card game still clung to the table, edges curled from vacuum exposure. She swallowed hard. Her mother's laughter echoed in memory, her father's voice calling for her to tidy up. Now the only answer was her own breathing. She moved on, passing closed cabin doors. She stopped before one and let her light linger on the nameplate, Ayla. Her mother's room. She didn't touch the door. Not yet. The weight of it pressed on her chest, and she forced herself forward, deeper into the ship. The lights of her suit HUD flickered as she descended toward the engineering deck. Radiation shields had degraded here, reading spiking and dipping, but still within safe margins. She felt the vibration in her bones when she crossed the catwalk above the reactor chamber. As a child she had peered through the railings, watching her father tune the heart of the ship. Now it was a darkened cavity, machinery silent, coolant crystallized in long spines. She paused at the lower hatch to catch her breath. That was when the unease began. Something was wrong in the stillness, an expectation pressing from the shadows. She swept her lamp across the wall and saw nothing unusual. Yet she felt it, a shift, as if the ship itself were holding something back. The path curved to the auxiliary bay. Her boots scuffed through a fine powder of frost where the atmosphere had leaked out long ago. She remembered playing here with scavenged parts, building toys from broken circuits, her mother indulging her curiosity until her father scolded for wasting components. Her lips twitched at the memory. Then she saw it. At the far end of the bay, where storage crates once lined the walls, stood a door that shouldn't exist. Its surface was seamless, silver-gray alloy unlike the rest of the freighter's patched bulkheads. Her lamp caught faint etchings across it, geometric lines pulsing faintly as though aware of her. She froze. Her father's voice filled her head unbidden. He had walked her through every part of the ship when she was little, every compartment, every junction, every hidden nook he had made into her playground. There had never been a door here. She approached slowly. The air was utterly still, the sound of her own breath magnified by the helmet. The door was tall, arched slightly at the top, its edges fused perfectly into the surrounding wall. No seams. No panel. No mechanism she could see. Yet when she drew closer, her HUD flickered again, as if the very alloy radiated interference. She reached out and placed her gloved palm against it. The metal was colder than the rest of the ship, a chill that seeped through insulation. For a moment, nothing. Then a hum vibrated through her hand, subtle but undeniable. Her heart hammered. She pulled back sharply, chest heaving. She turned her light across the walls, searching for a sign, a marking, anything to explain it. Nothing. Only that impossible door, watching her with silence. She stumbled back a step, the memories pressing in. Her mother, in the last days before the distress call, had grown distant. Her father had stopped letting her near engineering. Whispered arguments at night, cut short when she stirred awake. A sudden departure from their usual routes. She hadn't understood then. She understood now. Her parents had hidden something. She forced herself to steady her breathing. The suit recorded the moment, mapping the anomaly, but she already knew data would tell her little. The truth lay beyond the door. And whatever was sealed inside was the reason her parents had died. She stood alone in the dark, staring at the secret alloy wall, and whispered into her helmet, "What did you do?" Mara's boots echoed through the empty corridor as she moved away from the impossible door, though her eyes kept darting back to it. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the ship itself were aware she had uncovered a secret meant to stay buried. Her lamp beam scanned the walls, revealing peeling panels and frozen condensation, a memory-laden skeleton of her childhood home. She forced herself to breathe evenly, to silence the rising panic clawing at her chest. This was her ship. She had lived here. She had survived worse. And yet, standing alone in the silence, she felt small, unmoored. She reached the crew commons again, and her eyes lingered on the table. The cards were still there, brittle and curled, the ink faded. She remembered a game she had lost here once, and her father had scooped her into his arms, laughing despite her tears. A pang struck her, sharp and sudden, and she swallowed hard, shaking it off. She couldn't cry here, not yet. She had to understand first. She had to know why the door existed. The hallway beyond led to the quarters where her parents had lived. She hesitated before her mother's door, running a gloved hand along the frame. The metal was cold, but familiar. The lock mechanism was offline, frozen in the ship's long dormancy, and she slid it open with a careful push. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone, though the air was recycled, the smell a ghost of what had been. Her mother's workbench dominated the space, covered in tools, notes, and small components frozen mid-task. Diagrams were etched into panels along the wall, technical sketches of engines, circuits, and strange symbols Mara couldn't recognize. Her mother had been brilliant, meticulous, leaving a map of her thoughts in a room no one would find. Mara's fingers hovered over the workbench before she finally touched one of the diagrams, brushing away a thin layer of dust. Her mother had been building something, but what? She stepped to the datapad lying on the desk. The screen flickered weakly when she activated it, and a series of logs appeared, recordings of her parents' final weeks aboard the ship. The first one was her father, calm but tense, speaking into the recorder. "If anyone finds this, know that we did what we had to do. The device must remain sealed. No one can know where it is. Not even Mara." The word cut her deep. She remembered being told little, kept from the full picture, and now the weight of that secrecy pressed down on her chest. Another log activated automatically. Her mother, voice trembling, spoke of calculations, energy signatures, and the danger of the portal they had discovered. "We can't trust anyone," she said, looking straight into the camera. "Not the corporations, not the authorities, not even our own friends. It has to remain hidden. We can only protect it if we are willing to sacrifice everything." Mara's jaw tightened. Sacrifice. They had meant what they said. The realization settled over her like a shroud. The sealed door. The portal. Her parents hadn't died by accident. They had died protecting something unimaginable, and now it was her turn. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, but there was no one to guide her, no one to teach her how to navigate the choice she hadn't even understood until this moment. She left the quarters reluctantly and returned to the corridor, eyes drawn once more to the impossible door at the far end of the bay. Her instincts screamed to leave it alone, to respect her parents' warnings, but curiosity gnawed at her relentlessly. She circled the bay, examining the edges of the door, the etchings that seemed to shift subtly in her helmet light. The alloy was alien, far beyond any material she had seen in salvage yards, yet it was integrated flawlessly into the freighter's structure. Her parents had gone to incredible lengths to hide this. Her HUD flickered again as she approached, the interface picking up interference she couldn't identify. She ran diagnostic routines on the door, but nothing responded, no logs, no power source, no mechanism. Just a silent barrier, waiting. Waiting for her. Mara's heart thudded as she crouched, running a scanner along the frame. The results were inconclusive, except for a single anomaly, a faint genetic signature embedded in the alloy. She froze. Her father's voice whispered in her memory. Only a Delyen can open it. Memories cascaded over her. Nights spent playing hide-and-seek in engineering bays, her father teaching her to be careful with tools, her mother explaining systems she was too young to comprehend. They had trusted her implicitly, even when they couldn't tell her the truth. And now, standing before the sealed door, she realized that trust had been a test, a preparation. They had prepared her for this moment all along. Her fingers itched to reach out again, to touch the door, but she forced herself to step back. She had to think, to understand what she was dealing with. The portal her parents had hidden could be a weapon, a discovery, or a doorway to something beyond human comprehension. There was no way to know without crossing that threshold, but one thought burned in her mind: whatever lay beyond this door was connected to her family, to their deaths, and to the survival of countless others who would never even know they owed her parents their safety. The hum beneath the alloy grew louder in her mind, faint but insistent. She could feel it through her boots, through her fingers, through her pulse. The ship was alive in a way she had forgotten, a slow, patient awareness that had waited for her return. Mara inhaled, steadying herself, and realized that hesitation was no longer an option. Curiosity and duty were entwined, the secrets her parents had kept demanded her attention, and she was ready, or at least as ready as she could ever be. She took one last look at the empty bay, at the frozen remnants of her childhood, and then she moved closer to the door. The alloy seemed to respond to her presence, faint lines of light rippling across its surface. She extended a gloved hand, trembling slightly, and placed her palm against it. The hum surged, vibrating through her, a resonance that spoke directly to her bones. She drew in a breath and whispered into her helmet, "I'm here. I understand. I'll do it." And in that instant, the stillness of the ship was shattered by a faint, almost imperceptible pulse, a signal that the past was no longer asleep, and that the future she had inherited was waiting to be revealed. The hum grew louder, a low vibration that threaded through Mara's bones and echoed in her chest. Her gloved hand pressed harder against the door, feeling the alloy pulse faintly under her touch, alive in a way that defied all logic she had been taught as a scavenger and engineer. It was not a bulkhead, not storage, not even a hidden maintenance bay. This was something different, something alive, and aware. Her breath fogged the inside of her helmet as adrenaline surged. She hesitated, then pulled back slightly, circling the door. Every line etched across its surface seemed to move in time with the hum, geometric shapes folding and stretching just out of the corner of her vision. Mara crouched, scanning the edges with her portable sensor, feeding it into her HUD. The readouts were chaotic, energy signatures fluctuated across multiple frequencies, none human-made, all impossibly sophisticated. And beneath it, faint but distinct, the genetic marker she recognized immediately. Her parents' DNA, layered in complex sequences, as if the alloy itself could recognize who touched it. Only she could open this. Only she could awaken whatever was behind it. Her heart pounded. 21 years of questions, of dreams haunted by empty beds and whispered goodbyes, had led to this moment. She could almost hear her father's voice again, firm but careful. "Mara, you must never open anything we tell you to avoid, until you are ready." Her parents' warnings had been vague, indirect, protective, yet cryptic enough to leave her frustrated as a child. Now she understood. They hadn't been hiding from her, they had been preparing her. Her mind raced as she tried to anticipate what lay behind the door. A weapon? A treasure? A living intelligence? She could feel it calling, almost beckoning, and instinctively, she knew hesitation could cost lives. She glanced around the auxiliary bay. Empty. Silent. No witnesses. No interruptions. Her parents had died protecting this secret, the weight of their choices now rested squarely on her shoulders. Mara exhaled slowly and centered herself. Her hand hovered over the surface again. "I'm ready," she whispered. The alloy responded immediately. Lines of light spread from her palm, patterns blooming across the door like a circuit alive with consciousness. She pressed harder, and the hum shifted, rising in tone and complexity. She felt the ship itself hold its breath. And then, with a sudden, almost violent pulse, the door began to shift. Panels retracted inward silently, edges melting seamlessly, revealing a blackness deeper than shadow. Mara's light barely penetrated it. The portal behind it exuded a subtle heat, a gravitational pull, and a faint resonance of sound, like the low hum of a cathedral organ tuned to an otherworldly frequency. She stepped closer, instinctively ducking her head, feeling the hairs on her arms rise. It was not a room. It was a gateway. The air inside, though breathable, shimmered in a way that defied explanation, folding subtly, vibrating faintly with something unseen. Colors shifted across the visible spectrum, yet none could be named. Her HUD struggled to classify the energy fields. This was alien. This was dangerous. This was exactly what her parents had died protecting. Her foot crossed the threshold tentatively. The hum became a song, harmonizing with her heartbeat. She felt memories she had not lived, a sense of deep history vibrating through the portal's surface. It whispered of intelligence older than humanity, of technology that had been buried, forgotten, and guarded for millennia. Mara's stomach twisted in a mix of awe and fear. Her parents had encountered this and chosen secrecy over knowledge, protection over curiosity. And now she had a choice: follow their path, or uncover the full truth. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Shapes shifted in the portal, geometric forms folding into each other, impossible angles bending space in ways that defied physics. Her instincts screamed caution, but curiosity burned brighter. She inched further, reaching out a hand. As her fingers brushed the shimmer of the threshold, it pulsed, responsive, almost sentient. The resonance ran up her arm and through her neural implant. For a moment, she felt connected, a direct interface with something beyond human comprehension. A memory flashed unbidden, her mother, late nights hunched over schematics, muttering about energy thresholds and stabilization sequences. Her father, pacing, muttering warnings about interference, about awakening things they could not control. They had predicted this moment. They had trusted her. They had left the key in her own body, the genetic imprint that allowed her to interface with the door. The portal reacted to her presence. Colors bloomed and contracted, folding light and shadow together. She felt a pull, gentle but insistent, like a tide urging her forward. Her mind raced. If she crossed fully, there was no going back. She would see what her parents had sacrificed their lives to protect. And she would know, finally, why they had never spoken the full truth. Her fingers tightened on the shimmering edge. Her breathing slowed. She could feel the door's consciousness testing her resolve, evaluating her, recognizing her lineage. She was not just opening a door, she was stepping into the legacy her parents had left, a responsibility that carried weight beyond measure. And then she stepped through. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. Gravity shifted, but not uniformly. Colors surged across her vision, a spectrum impossible to name. Time itself seemed to stretch and compress, folding back on itself. She stumbled, catching herself against the edge, her senses assaulted by stimuli that had no parallel in her memory. Yet she felt no fear. She felt awe. She felt the truth of what her parents had protected, and the enormity of the secret pressed against her mind like a living presence. She realized she could feel the ship's absence now, the distance between the freighter's metal shell and the alien intelligence beyond. The Kestrel's wake waited outside, empty and quiet, but inside this shimmering portal, everything was alive, ancient, and infinitely dangerous. Her eyes adjusted, and she saw it, a device suspended in zero space, geometric yet organic, thrumming with potential energy. This was the heart of the secret, the reason her parents had died, the object whose power could reshape human space itself. Mara felt the truth settle in her chest like a stone. She was alone, but not unprepared. She had been brought here for this. A new hum arose from the portal, deeper, insistent, almost questioning her. Mara's hand hovered over the device. Her parents' voices whispered through memory, warnings tangled with encouragement. She was ready. She had to be. The future, fragile and infinite, waited in her hands. Mara's breathing echoed loudly in her helmet as she studied the device suspended before her. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered, a lattice of geometric forms that shifted and breathed as if alive, radiating energy that made her neural implant pulse with warmth and unease. The portal's light reflected off her visor in prismatic waves, bending space and perception, and her mind struggled to categorize it. Her parents had fought to keep this hidden. She finally understood why. This was not just dangerous, it was beyond comprehension. She circled the device slowly, keeping her hands visible to herself, hesitant to touch, yet drawn inexorably forward. Every instinct she had, engineer, scavenger, survivor, urged caution, but curiosity overrode fear. She had spent years trying to uncover the truth about her parents' disappearance, and here it lay in a form she could barely perceive. A shiver ran down her spine as she realized that one wrong move could collapse the portal, destabilize the freighter, or worse. Her eyes caught a flicker of light along one edge of the device. Tiny panels opened, revealing internal mechanisms that moved with a logic she could almost understand. Symbols flashed across the surface, resonating with her neural key, and she felt a connection as if the device recognized her lineage. Her pulse quickened. This recognition was what her parents had meant when they said only a Delien could open it. They hadn't lied. It was her bloodline that allowed interaction, her mind that could interface with the alien technology safely, or, at least, more safely than anyone else. Mara reached out, fingers hovering over the surface. A soft vibration surged through her palm when she made contact, the device responding instantly. Waves of energy ran up her arm, into her implant, and she felt her consciousness expand slightly, touching patterns and frequencies she had no language to describe. The portal hummed in resonance, a living chorus harmonizing with her heartbeat, welcoming her, testing her resolve. Her thoughts raced. Could she activate it fully? Could she understand the purpose her parents had died protecting? She thought of her father's calm tone in the logs, of her mother's frantic calculations and warnings, and realized the gravity of what she faced. If she failed, it would not just be her life at stake. She felt the weight of centuries of hidden knowledge pressing down, the responsibility of guarding something older than humanity itself. Her hand pressed against the device deliberately, and a stream of light traveled from the tip of her fingers into its lattice. The energy wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. She felt memories, snippets, fragments, not her own, yet familiar, coursing through her mind. The sensation was disorienting, yet compelling. She realized that the device had a memory, a record of interactions, perhaps even sentience. And it knew her parents, had known them, had recognized their efforts to protect it. Suddenly, a pulse of energy shot outward, and Mara staggered back, catching herself against the portal's edge. The light coalesced into patterns that mimicked the human neural network, then shifted into alien geometries she could barely comprehend. Her HUD tried to translate the data, but her implant failed to keep pace. She felt a surge of frustration mixed with awe. This was no ordinary technology. This was the culmination of intelligence far beyond her civilization, yet she was standing at the threshold, capable of interacting with it because of the trust her parents had placed in her. She steadied herself and examined the device further. Panels rotated, revealing conduits and nodes that seemed almost organic, yet mechanically precise. Each movement emitted a harmonic resonance that her neural key translated as faint commands, or maybe warnings. She realized the device was adaptive, learning, responding to her presence, evaluating her intentions. One wrong gesture could trigger a defense mechanism, collapse the portal, or worse. Mara's thoughts turned to the sealed door, the freighter, the emptiness outside. She wasn't alone in the outer belt. She knew that someone like Riven Core or another scavenger could arrive at any moment, drawn by rumors of the freighter and its hidden legacy. If she didn't secure the device, it could fall into the wrong hands, and the consequences would be catastrophic. Her pulse quickened at the thought. Time was limited. She crouched closer, studying a node that pulsed more rapidly than the others. Her mind raced through engineering logic, alien physics, and patterns she recognized from her mother's notes. It was a fusion of science and something else, something intuitive, almost alive. She traced a path along the lattice with her fingers, and the device responded, opening a small compartment. Inside was a crystalline matrix, glowing softly, embedded with symbols she recognized from her mother's logs. The symbols shifted subtly as she touched them, aligning with her neural key. Mara realized this was the control interface. Her parents had hidden it here, knowing only she could access it fully. The weight of that realization made her stomach tighten. They had trusted her. They had sacrificed everything to protect this, and now the responsibility rested entirely on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and connected fully with the crystalline interface, feeling a surge of energy course through her, filling her mind with patterns, frequencies, and concepts she could barely comprehend. A voice, almost imperceptible, whispered through the resonance, not human, not alien, but something in between. It was aware of her presence, assessing her intentions, waiting. Mara focused, pushing aside fear, letting her instincts guide her, trusting the training, the lessons, the love her parents had imbued. The device pulsed again, harmonizing with her neural key, forming a bridge between human cognition and something far older, far wiser. She realized then that she had a choice. She could explore, activate, and learn, risking destabilization, or she could step back, leaving the secret dormant, safe but inaccessible. Her parents' warnings echoed, the world was not ready, and neither were most of humanity. Yet here she stood, capable of understanding, capable of interfacing, capable of stepping into their legacy. Mara exhaled and whispered, I understand. Her fingers pressed firmly into the crystalline interface, and the device pulsed brightly, responding to her lineage, her presence, her intent. She was no longer just a visitor. She was a guardian, a bridge, and the next in line to protect, to decide, to wield knowledge her parents had died defending. The portal's hum rose to a crescendo, enveloping her senses, and she felt the weight of responsibility settle firmly in her chest. The freighter outside waited, silent and empty, but inside the portal, a secret older than humanity itself had awakened. Mara was ready. The air shimmered as Mara stepped fully through the threshold, the moment of crossing registering like a shockwave through her entire body. Gravity shifted subtly, not enough to throw her off balance but enough to remind her that she was no longer in the familiar confines of the kestrel's wake. The colors around her bent and refracted unpredictably, cascading in patterns she couldn't name, and the hum of the portal wrapped around her, resonating with her neural implant. Every sense she had was alive, yet confused, assaulted by stimuli that were alien, incomprehensible, and impossibly beautiful. She steadied herself against the invisible pull of the portal's interior, marveling at the space before her. It wasn't a room, a corridor, or a chamber, it was a field, a lattice of light and energy that extended in every direction, folding and twisting in ways her mind strained to comprehend. The device hovered at the center, geometric yet organic, radiating power in waves that distorted spacetime itself. Tiny arcs of energy traced along its surface like veins of light, pulsing in patterns that seemed to communicate, to judge, to observe. Her heart pounded. She could feel the weight of her parents' decisions pressing on her from across time. They had died here, protecting this secret, and now it was her turn. The thought of their sacrifice was heavy, but it didn't paralyze her. Instead, it steeled her resolve. She had come here for a reason, and she would face whatever consequences lay beyond this portal. Tentatively, she reached out again, fingers brushing the lattice of the device. The resonance surged through her, a flood of understanding and sensation she could barely contain. It wasn't just energy, it was knowledge, memory, intention. She saw fragments of her parents' work, the calculations, the warnings, the designs for stabilizing the portal and safeguarding the device. Their efforts had been meticulous, precise, and full of love for her, even if she had never fully realized it as a child. The space around her shifted in response to her presence. Light arcs reoriented themselves, and the portal seemed to contract and expand with her movement, as if aware of her intentions. Mara felt a pulse in her chest, a rhythm echoing through the lattice, syncing with her neural implant. For a brief moment, she could sense the history embedded in the device, the countless hands that had touched it, the civilizations that had come before, and the power it held to alter reality itself. Suddenly, a ripple of motion passed through the field. Shadows coalesced at the periphery, shapes that weren't entirely physical, forms that twisted and shifted with a logic all their own. Mara froze, every instinct alert. The portal was alive in more ways than she had imagined. It was not just a conduit, it was a guardian, testing her, assessing whether she was worthy of access. Her breath quickened as the shapes moved closer, and a subtle vibration ran through the floor, or what she perceived as floor, beneath her feet. It was a warning, not violent, but clear, the portal was not to be trifled with. Mara clenched her fists, forcing her mind to remain calm, her thoughts steady. She reminded herself that she was prepared, that her parents had trained her for this, that she had the neural key and her bloodline to guide her. She was ready. A new pattern emerged in the lattice of light around the device. Symbols she recognized from her mother's notes aligned, folding into each other in sequences that pulsed in harmony with the device's core. Mara's fingers moved over the surface instinctively, tracing the paths her parents had once calculated, matching her motions to the resonance. The portal responded immediately, expanding, stabilizing, as if acknowledging her competence. Her pulse raced. She realized she could step further into the field without destabilizing it. Each movement she made created ripples of light, reflections of energy that traveled outward, folding back on themselves. She reached the center, standing directly before the device. It hovered just beyond her reach, the light intense but not blinding, the hum almost musical, a harmony that resonated with her neural key. Mara hesitated, considering her next move. She could manipulate the device further, explore its potential, perhaps even activate it fully. But the portal seemed to pulse in warning. One wrong motion could collapse the field, destroy the freighter, or worse, send energy cascading outward with consequences she could not foresee. She felt the responsibility of her parents' sacrifice in a tangible way, their deaths had been a protection, not an abandonment. She exhaled slowly, centering herself. The portal responded, contracting slightly, creating a safe space for her to act. She moved her hand over the crystalline interface embedded in the device, feeling the surge of energy course through her. Data, knowledge, and sensation flowed into her mind, fragmentary but coherent. She glimpsed instructions, warnings, and possibilities. She understood that she could stabilize the portal further, access the hidden energies safely, but that each step required care, focus, and awareness. A sudden flicker at the edge of the field made her spin. Shapes formed, moving with purpose, almost sentient. Mara realized with a start that the portal was alive not only as a construct but as a defensive organism, designed to prevent unworthy access. It probed her, testing her intentions, her lineage, her understanding. She held her ground, letting her mind synchronize with the neural key, responding in kind to the portal's subtle questions. Time seemed to stretch. Colors shifted in impossible sequences, shapes folded into themselves, and the device pulsed in response to her touch. Mara felt a deep connection forming, a bridge between human consciousness and alien intelligence. The portal's hum became a song, a symphony of power and knowledge, and she realized that she was no longer merely observing. She was part of it, an active participant in the field's resonance. Finally, she took a steadying breath, extending both hands fully over the device. The symbols aligned completely, energy surging outward in a controlled arc. Mara felt the portal stabilize, the lattice of light folding neatly, cohering into a harmonious structure. The shapes at the periphery ceased their probing, retreating into the edges of the field. The device floated silently, thrumming with restrained energy, acknowledging her presence, recognizing her authority. She exhaled, tension leaving her body in a long, measured release. She was here, she was capable, and she was ready to continue. The portal hummed gently, welcoming, guiding, alive. Mara knew that whatever lay beyond this point, whatever secrets her parents had died to protect, she was ready to face them. And as she looked around the impossible expanse, she felt the gravity of her inheritance settle firmly on her shoulders, both a burden and a calling. The field pulsed once more, and Mara stepped fully forward, eyes fixed on the device at the center. She was no longer a child of the freighter. She was a guardian of a secret older than humanity itself. The soft hum of the portal vibrated through Mara's chest, steady and hypnotic, when the first warning came from the freighter's exterior sensors. She hadn't noticed it at first, caught entirely by the alien space around her, but the HUD flickered, displaying an external anomaly. Movement. Not inside the portal, outside. Footsteps on metal. Someone boarding. Her heart lurched. She hadn't expected anyone else, not yet, not for hours at least. Her mind raced through possibilities, a salvager. A scavenger. Someone who had tracked the Kestrel's wake through rumors and traces left in trade networks. She barely had time to consider her options before the comm line crackled with a familiar, harsh tone. Mara Delien, a voice said, low and precise. The voice carried familiarity and menace. I've been looking for you. She froze, recognizing the unmistakable edge in the timbre, riven core. Ex-mercenary, scavenger with no loyalty but to profit, and ruthless enough to kill for it. Mara's jaw tightened. He had found her, and worse, he had found the freighter. The hum of the portal suddenly seemed louder, as if the device itself reacted to the intruder, alerting her, warning her. Step away from the ship, Riven's voice continued, calm but deadly. I don't want to hurt you. I want what's inside. Hand it over. Mara's mind raced. The portal's field hummed faintly, almost a cautionary growl, as if it sensed the threat in the human presence nearby. She knew she couldn't allow him access. The device she had only just begun to interface with, the secret her parents had sacrificed their lives for, could not fall into Riven's hands. She stepped back slightly, steadying herself, trying to gauge her options. I'm not giving you anything, she said, voice firm. She felt her pulse in her ears, resonating with the alien hum around her. The portal responded subtly, rippling along its edges, sending currents of energy that Mara could feel in her boots. It was almost protective, almost alive. Almost warning her that she had to move fast. Riven's laughter crackled through the comm line, bitter and amused. You really don't know when to quit, do you? That ship, that device, whatever it is, it's worth more than you can imagine. And I'm not leaving without it. Mara assessed the portal's field, the device hovering at its center, and realized she had an advantage. While Riven and his crew were outside, she had the portal's energy at her fingertips. She could manipulate the field, maybe create a barrier, maybe even trap him in the freighter. But she had no idea if she could control it fully. One wrong move could collapse the portal or trigger something catastrophic. Her parents' warnings came rushing back, protection first, discovery second. She activated a quick sequence on her suit interface, sending a jolt of energy into the freighter's docking clamps. The shuttle outside shuddered violently. Riven's voice shouted, panicked for the first time, as he realized something had gone wrong. Mara smiled grimly. She had bought herself a few precious seconds. The portal pulsed again, responding to her focus. Mara extended her hands toward the device, drawing on the neural key, and felt the field respond more solidly, almost like a force she could wield. She could manipulate it just enough to create a buffer, a protective wall between her and the freighter's exterior, enough to slow Riven's entry. But she had to act fast. Riven's crew burst through the main hatch, shouting, scrambling over debris. Mara felt the portal's hum intensify, a vibrating chorus of warning and approval. The alien intelligence seemed to sense her intent: protect, defend, preserve. She extended the energy from the device outward, forming a shimmering barrier that pushed against the airlock, bending metal and sound waves in ways she could barely understand. The intruders stumbled, some thrown off their feet, others pressed against the bulkhead by invisible force. Riven's voice rang out above the chaos. "Stop playing games, Mara. That thing doesn't belong to you." She didn't respond. Instead, she focused on the barrier, weaving the portal's energy with her own understanding, learning its rhythms, feeling its heartbeat. The field stabilized, forming a semi-permeable shield that kept anyone from approaching the portal directly. She could see the frustration and anger in Riven's movements, the way he barked orders to his crew, but the field was holding. She glanced back at the device, its lattice of geometric forms shifting in subtle recognition. The portal's intelligence acknowledged her control, harmonizing with her neural key, pulsing as if proud of her grasp. She felt a strange exhilaration mixed with fear. She was the sole protector of a secret her parents had died safeguarding, and the first test had come sooner than she expected. Her mind worked quickly. If Riven breached the freighter fully, he could attempt to access the portal's edges. She couldn't risk that. The only solution was to draw him further inside while maintaining the field around her. Mara moved deliberately, retreating through the portal's field while extending energy tendrils that acted as barriers and warnings. Riven and his crew stumbled after her, unaware of the invisible currents holding them at bay. "You're going to regret this, Mara." Riven shouted, voice desperate, dangerous. "I don't care what you think you're protecting, I'm taking it." She ignored him. Focused entirely on the portal, on the device, on the hum that now seemed to echo her heartbeat. Every motion of her hands and every step she took synchronized with the energy field, creating a safe corridor, a protective cage, a buffer between her and the intruders. She felt alive, more than she had in years, and utterly terrified. The stakes were incomprehensibly high, and she alone had the power to decide the outcome. The crew stumbled against the shimmering barriers, some collapsing from the force, others pinned mid-step. Riven cursed and shouted orders, but she felt the portal's pulse guiding her movements, strengthening her defenses in ways she hadn't yet learned to control fully. Her parents had prepared her for this, not for the fight itself, but for the responsibility of standing between the world and what it could not yet handle. Mara's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing at the device. She could sense the portal responding, almost willing her forward, preparing her for the confrontation she hadn't sought but could not avoid. She raised her hands fully, drawing the field tighter, feeling the energy wrap around her like armor. The hum reached a resonant pitch, filling the entire space, vibrating through metal and flesh alike. Riven took a step closer, defiant, reckless. Mara held her ground, heart hammering, mind sharp. She realized that the moment of reckoning had arrived, the freighter outside, the intruders, the device within the portal, it was all converging. She was alone, yes, but she was ready. Her parents' legacy, the portal's intelligence, and her own determination converged in a single, impossible truth: she would protect this secret at all costs. And as Riven lunged toward the barrier, Mara braced herself, energy rippling outward in a protective wave, ready to defend, ready to act, ready to face the consequences of stepping fully into her parents' hidden world. The pulse of energy from the portal surged violently as Mara's hands extended, guiding the lattice of light to stabilize a corridor through the impossibly shifting field. She could feel it responding to her intent, bending space and time into a path she could navigate safely while keeping the freighter's intruders at bay. Riven's shouts came from somewhere outside the portal's edge, muffled but insistent, carrying the weight of human anger and impatience. Mara exhaled through her helmet, forcing calm into her racing heart. She had no choice but to move deeper into the portal. Her first step was disorienting. Gravity shifted unevenly, pulling her in directions that made her knees buckle, yet she adjusted instinctively, relying on the neural key's guidance. The device at the center pulsed rhythmically, and Mara realized it was stabilizing the local space, creating a corridor of relative normalcy in an environment that defied human perception. She moved cautiously, boots landing lightly on what felt like solid ground but wasn't solid at all. Energy currents rippled beneath her, supporting her weight as though the portal itself had learned her patterns. Behind her, Riven's voice escalated, urgent and angry. "Mara! Stop hiding! Step aside or I swear," his words cut off with a sudden yelp. Mara didn't look back, but she felt the field pulse outward, a protective wave that hurled the nearest crew member backward, crushing him gently against a distortion in the portal. It was a warning, not a weapon. She hadn't wanted to harm them, only to buy herself time. The corridor twisted further, folding space into itself. Mara's mind strained to interpret the geometry, the impossible angles, the way the colors bent around her. Yet the neural key synchronized with the portal, guiding her subconscious, translating alien logic into instinctive navigation. Each step drew her closer to the device, closer to understanding, closer to the core of her parents' secret. She could feel Riven's pursuit intensifying, his presence a shadow at the edge of her perception. He was resourceful, trained, and utterly ruthless. She couldn't let him reach the device. The portal's intelligence seemed to recognize this, subtly shifting currents to impede his movement while leaving Mara's path clear. The alien resonance pulsed in her chest, a strange harmony with her own heartbeat. Mara rounded a curve in the corridor, and the lattice ahead shimmered with light. She realized the device's energy was forming a protective sphere around its central node, the crystalline interface glowing with patterns she could almost read. She approached cautiously, reaching out to trace a finger along the luminous surface. Data and energy surged into her neural implant, fragments of information too vast to comprehend in full but enough to guide her actions. Riven's voice was closer now, shouting orders, cursing, and calling for his crew to assist. Mara felt the portal's response as vibrations through her boots and hands, shifting energy currents that pushed, deflected, and slowed him without endangering him fatally. The portal's intelligence was alive in a way she hadn't fully grasped yet, capable of subtle defense, capable of communication through resonance. She felt a deep respect for it, an awareness that she was not merely using the device, she was cooperating with it. The field rippled violently as Riven attempted a desperate maneuver, jumping into a corridor branch Mara had left open. He collided with an energy current, thrown backward with a grunt of surprise and frustration. Mara's pulse raced, but she maintained focus, channeling her intent through the neural key. The corridor shifted, folding slightly, forming a loop that forced him to retrace his path while keeping her clear. She exhaled, heart hammering, and approached the central node fully. The crystalline interface pulsed in response to her presence, patterns of light spiraling outward, aligning with the energy currents she had been manipulating. Mara realized the portal was teaching her, guiding her through the final steps to reach the device safely while maintaining defenses against intruders. She was not just interacting, she was synchronizing with the intelligence, forming a bond forged by lineage, training, and purpose. Riven roared in frustration as he adjusted, trying to circumvent the field, but each attempt was met with subtle counterforces that Mara didn't consciously control. She understood instinctively that the portal was learning from her, adapting to the intruder while following her guidance. Every movement she made shaped the energy currents, every step forward stabilized the corridor. At last, she reached the central node. Her hands hovered over the crystalline surface, feeling the energy pulse through her, resonating with her neural key. Knowledge and sensation flooded her mind, patterns, calculations, sequences, and warnings from her parents. They had prepared her for this, had sacrificed everything to ensure she could navigate this moment. She felt their presence in memory and data, guiding her choices even in death. The portal's hum intensified, a symphony of energy and sound that enveloped her. Mara reached out fully, connecting her neural key to the crystalline interface. Light surged, and the corridor around her expanded, folding space to create a stable pocket large enough for her to manipulate the device safely. Riven's shouts were distant now, muffled by the portal's currents. He could see her, he could attempt pursuit, but he could not reach the device without facing forces beyond human comprehension. Mara steadied herself, absorbing the data flowing through her mind. She glimpsed fragments of the portal's purpose, the magnitude of the secret her parents had died protecting, and the responsibility now entrusted to her. She realized the stakes. The device's power could reshape civilizations, collapse the freighter if mishandled, or protect countless lives if wielded wisely. Her parents' warnings echoed in her mind, intertwined with the portal's resonance: protect, preserve, understand. The corridor pulsed one final time, and Mara felt a moment of clarity. She was not alone, but she was alone in purpose. Riven and his crew were outside, blocked and delayed by forces they could not comprehend. Mara was inside, fully synchronized with the portal and its device, ready to explore the secret her parents had guarded, ready to understand the legacy they had left her, ready to face the consequences of stepping fully into their hidden world. Her hands pressed against the crystalline interface, and the portal responded, stabilizing the corridor completely. Colors, light, and energy aligned, forming a coherent, navigable space. Mara exhaled slowly, heart steadying, and whispered into her helmet, "I'm here. I'm ready." The portal's hum deepened in acknowledgement, a living, conscious confirmation that she had arrived where her parents had intended, and that the next chapter of their sacrifice and secret was now hers to navigate. Mara's hands hovered over the crystalline interface as streams of data and energy flowed into her mind. Patterns shifted, symbols reorganized, and fragmented memories of her parents' final days surfaced through the neural key. She could see it all now, the meticulous calculations, the late-night arguments, the deliberate secrecy. Her father's voice, recorded in logs but vivid in her memory, echoed, "We cannot let them understand. The knowledge is too dangerous. Even discovery could destroy more than we protect." She focused, pulling the streams together, following the currents of alien logic woven into the lattice. Images formed in her mind, clearer and more coherent than any memory she had known. Her parents had discovered the device decades earlier, long before Mara was born. It was not merely a portal. It was a construct, a vessel, a guardian of energy patterns older than human civilization, tied to the foundations of the jump gates themselves. They had seen the potential for power, for catastrophe, and understood that no one in human space could wield it responsibly. Fragments of her mother's notes merged with the portal's patterns, revealing an intricate network of stabilization nodes, energy flows, and safeguards. Her mother's voice whispered through her mind, full of urgency and love, "We cannot risk it falling into any hands. Even a government, even friends. Only Mara can interact safely." The realization hit her with crushing clarity. Her parents had engineered this entire path for her, embedding the neural key into her very being, preparing her for this confrontation she had not even known was coming. Mara's chest tightened as she absorbed the truth. They hadn't simply died to protect a secret, they had died to protect humanity itself. Every choice, every calculation, every sleepless night had been to ensure that the device would not destabilize, would not be misused, and would not fall into the hands of someone like Riven. She felt both awe and sorrow, the weight of her inheritance pressing on her shoulders with almost unbearable force. The portal pulsed around her, responding to her understanding. She felt it shift subtly, the lattice of light and energy bending in acknowledgement of her comprehension. She traced a pattern along the crystalline interface, and the portal's hum deepened, harmonizing with her neural key. It was as if the intelligence within the device recognized her lineage, and accepted her grasp. Images coalesced further. She saw her parents interacting with the device years earlier, adjusting energy flows, recording logs, calculating contingencies in ways that stretched far beyond human logic. They had discovered that the device could interface with the jump gate network directly, capable of redirecting, amplifying, or collapsing nodes at will. In the wrong hands, it could destabilize entire star systems. Their decision had been clear: secrecy, sacrifice, and lineage. Mara had been born into a role she hadn't understood until this moment, a guardian, the only one capable of safe interaction. Her mind reeled. The portal's field extended beyond the visible lattice, into dimensions she could barely perceive. Currents of energy flowed in loops and spirals, each interaction creating feedback that reinforced stability. Mara realized that her parents had not only sealed the device behind a door, they had integrated their lives, their knowledge, and their sacrifice into the very fabric of the portal. Their deaths had been deliberate, their absence a safeguard against curiosity and greed. Riven's voice reached her from outside the field, harsh and frustrated. "Mara! Step aside. You don't know what you're playing with." But she didn't flinch. She understood better than he could imagine. The portal's hum deepened again, resonating with her confidence and intent. She traced another sequence along the interface, activating a series of stabilization nodes her parents had left encoded in the lattice. Each node pulsed brightly, sending ripples of energy through the portal, reinforcing the integrity of the field, and ensuring the device remained secure. Images of her parents' final moments flashed in her mind, her father whispering instructions into logs, her mother frantically adjusting conduits, both of them aware that any misstep could destroy them. They had chosen death over compromise, leaving her the sole heir to their knowledge. Mara's chest tightened further, a mix of grief and purpose settling over her. She had been trained without knowing it, guided without her awareness, and now she had the power and responsibility to continue their work. Her hands moved confidently over the interface, reading the alien patterns intuitively, her neural key translating sequences into understanding. She could see the potential consequences of each adjustment, the delicate balance that kept the portal stable, and the catastrophic results that could occur if it fell into unworthy hands. She realized that Riven's greed, his impatience, and his lack of understanding made him a direct threat, not only to her but to the entire network of human and alien systems connected indirectly to the jump gates. Mara exhaled slowly. She was alone, but not unprepared. The portal's intelligence harmonized with her neural key, reinforcing her control, guiding her interactions. She understood the device now, not fully, not entirely, but enough to navigate its purpose safely. Her parents' sacrifice had been the foundation, her understanding was the bridge. She traced one final sequence, locking the energy flows into a stable configuration. The portal hummed with approval, a living acknowledgement of her grasp, and the lattice settled into a coherent form around the device. Mara felt the full weight of responsibility settle in her chest, the knowledge, the power, and the duty to protect. Her parents had trusted her. They had died so she could understand, so she could act, so she could protect the secret that no one else could. The portal pulsed once more, vibrant and alive, and Mara whispered into the resonance, "I understand. I will protect it." Outside, Riven's frustrated voice faded, unable to breach the field. Inside, Mara stood in the center of the portal, connected fully to the device, and for the first time, she felt the clarity and purpose her parents had sacrificed everything to grant her. She was ready to face whatever came next. Mara's hands hovered over the crystalline interface, the portal's hum now a steady, comforting resonance, yet her mind remained alert. She knew Riven wasn't finished. Outside the lattice of energy, the freighter's airlocks shuddered, and metallic thuds echoed faintly through the portal's field. The intruders were trying again, desperate and unpredictable, but Mara felt the energy around her pulse in synchrony with her heartbeat, guiding, protecting, anticipating. She was no longer merely reacting, she was orchestrating, working with the portal's intelligence as if it were an extension of herself. Her neural key pulsed sharply, feeding her the patterns of the device in ways she could intuitively interpret. Each node, each lattice strand, each arc of energy was a piece of a puzzle she could now manipulate. The knowledge of her parents' sacrifices, the logs she had scoured, the fragments of diagrams etched into the freighter's walls, all converged here. Mara realized that her parents had designed the device and the portal not merely as a secret but as a living lesson, a test, a path to understanding that only their child could traverse safely. Riven's voice came again, harsh, angry, filled with impatience. Mara! You can't hold it forever. I'm coming in. The metallic sounds of the airlocks flexing under pressure reached her senses, but the portal held, bending, absorbing, and deflecting the intruder's attempts with subtle waves of energy she could feel through her neural key. Mara allowed herself a brief smile, tempered with focus. Her parents' warnings had been dire, but now she understood, they had trusted her to continue what they had begun, to protect a secret larger than any human could contain. She moved her hands deliberately over the crystalline interface, following sequences she had not seen before, intuitively guided by the portal. Lights pulsed along the lattice in response, reinforcing the field, stabilizing the currents, and bending the alien energy in ways that made the intruders stumble, keeping them at bay. Every adjustment sent new ripples through the portal, harmonizing her intent with the device's response. She felt a strange exhilaration in the synchronization, a thrill tinged with fear and awe. The portal's energy shifted suddenly, creating a corridor of coherent space that led toward a deeper section of the lattice. Mara realized the device itself was directing her, guiding her deeper into its network, almost as if it wanted her to understand something beyond mere stabilization. She followed, feeling the hum resonate more intensely, as though the portal recognized her comprehension and was rewarding her focus with clarity. Riven shouted again, his tone bordering panic. You don't know what you're doing. Step aside or I will force it. But Mara ignored him. She had learned that force alone was meaningless here, the portal responded to understanding, to intent, to lineage. Violence could not breach this space, and he lacked the connection necessary to manipulate it. As she advanced, images from her parents' logs merged with the patterns before her. She saw the calculations her mother had made for stabilizing energy surges, the careful diagrams her father had etched into the ship's metal walls, the encoded sequences that ensured only a Delien could fully interact with the device. They had laid every safeguard, every lesson, every warning into the structure of the portal itself. Mara's chest tightened with a mix of grief and admiration. Her parents had not merely hidden the secret, they had prepared her to inherit it. She reached a chamber within the portal where the energy lattice formed concentric rings around the crystalline device. Here, the hum intensified into a near-musical resonance, filling her mind with patterns she could almost vocalize. She extended her hands fully, feeling the currents of energy pulse through her fingers, through her neural key, and into her consciousness. She understood the sequences intuitively now, guiding the flows to reinforce stability while keeping the intruder's influence at bay. Riven's attempts escalated, she could sense his presence in the freighter's corridors, hear the strain in his voice as he realized brute force would not suffice. Mara's fingers moved quickly, activating a series of stabilizing nodes along the lattice that rippled outward, reinforcing the protective field. One of the intruders collided with the energy barrier, thrown back against a distorted corridor segment, grunting in surprise and frustration. Mara felt the portal's subtle satisfaction at her success, an almost sentient acknowledgement that she was learning, growing, and controlling the space safely. Her mind connected fully with the device now. Knowledge and sensation streamed through her consciousness, patterns of energy, sequences of protection, layers of history encoded in the lattice. She could sense the potential for catastrophe if mismanaged, the fragile balance her parents had fought to preserve, and the consequences of allowing anyone else near it. Riven and his crew were now irrelevant, the portal's field was both a shield and a teacher, guiding her hands, her thoughts, her intent. Mara exhaled slowly, feeling the hum stabilize around her, pulsing in harmony with her own heartbeat. She realized that the device was more than a secret or a weapon, it was a living construct, intertwined with intelligence far older than humanity, responsive to understanding and lineage rather than force. Her parents had been the first to learn its rhythms, and now she was the next. Outside, she could sense Riven's frustration building. His voice rose in anger, then desperation, then silence as the portal held him at bay. Mara's focus was absolute. She adjusted the crystalline interface with precision, aligning the energy currents into a perfect harmonic loop that stabilized the field entirely. The intruder's attempts were deflected, slowed, neutralized without harm, and the device thrummed with approval. She felt a deep, resonant connection with the portal, a bond forged through lineage, understanding, and purpose. Her parents had sacrificed everything so she could reach this point, so she could inherit the knowledge and responsibility that no one else could bear. Mara's eyes swept over the lattice, the crystalline device, the swirling currents of energy, and she whispered softly, almost reverently, "I will protect it. I understand what must be done." The portal responded to her words, the lattice pulsing gently, stabilizing further, and Mara felt a profound sense of clarity. She was no longer just a visitor in this space. She was a guardian, a bridge between her parents' sacrifice, the portal's intelligence, and the outside world. And as she centered herself before the device, she knew the final challenge was imminent, to secure the secret fully and ensure that it would remain protected from those who would misuse it. The next step was hers to take, and she was ready. Mara stood before the crystalline interface, hands steady, heartbeat synchronized with the portal's hum. The lattice of energy had settled into perfect harmony, every arc and pulse aligned with her neural key. Outside the portal, the freighter lay silent. She could sense the intruder's retreating presence, Riven's angered voice fading, muffled by the energy field she had woven. She allowed herself a brief exhale. The immediate threat was gone. The secret her parents had died to protect was secure, at least for now. The portal pulsed, responsive to her intent, and she felt it guiding her to the next step. The lattice shifted, creating a pathway deeper into its heart, revealing a chamber she had not noticed before. Unlike the chaotic, twisting corridors of energy that had surrounded her, this space was calm, coherent, almost serene. Light refracted in gentle patterns, casting geometric shapes on surfaces that seemed to exist yet not exist. Mara stepped forward, feeling the device's resonance grow warmer, welcoming. She traced her fingers along the crystalline surface, reading the energy flows, the encoded sequences her parents had left behind. This was more than just a portal, it was a repository of knowledge, a living archive of intelligence from before humanity's time. It stored calculations, histories, even warnings for civilizations that might come into contact with it. Her parents had dedicated their lives to safeguarding this, embedding their knowledge, their bloodline, and their sacrifices into the lattice itself. Mara took a deep breath. She had come seeking answers, and the portal was offering them, not fully, but enough. She realized that understanding the entirety of it would take decades, perhaps a lifetime, but that was not her burden alone. She was the guardian, the first of a lineage prepared to ensure the device remained protected, understood, and respected. Her parents' warnings now resonated fully, the secret was not a weapon, not a treasure, it was responsibility. The portal pulsed in acknowledgement of her understanding, almost as if approving her clarity. Mara placed both hands fully on the crystalline interface and felt the data streams surge, flowing into her consciousness with a precision that bordered on symbiosis. She could see her parents' final calculations, the fail-safes they had built into the lattice, the sequences designed to respond to lineage and intent alone. Every movement she made reinforced stability, creating a network of energy flows that would endure long after she left this space. A gentle vibration ran through the portal, and Mara realized she was being given a choice: remain here, fully integrated into the portal's lattice and knowledge, or step back into the freighter, bringing only her understanding and leaving the device protected but external. She hesitated, contemplating the enormity of what she had inherited. Her parents had chosen secrecy, and their deaths had ensured it. Now it was her decision. The hum deepened, coaxing her to act. Mara stepped back slightly, feeling the resonance in her chest, the pulse of energy that connected her to the portal. She understood that she could leave safely, the device's intelligence would respond to her bloodline and her intent. It would remain secure. It would remain protected. She could walk away knowing the secret would endure, waiting for future generations capable of understanding it fully. Outside the portal, she could sense the freighter settling. The hull creaked as if exhaling, empty and silent, the intruders gone, defeated not by force but by intelligence and control. Mara allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Her parents' sacrifice had not been in vain. She had stepped into the path they had forged, navigated the tests they had built, and emerged not only intact but capable. She exhaled slowly and removed her gloves, letting her bare hands hover over the crystalline surface one final time. The hum responded with a soft, approving vibration, acknowledging her stewardship. Mara pressed lightly against the interface, feeling the resonance fold into itself, locking the portal into a stable configuration she could manage from within the freighter if needed. The lattice pulsed once more, then settled into gentle cycles, a living heartbeat waiting for its guardian. For the first time in 21 years, Mara felt a profound sense of closure. The memories of her parents, the longing she had carried since infancy, the unanswered questions, all of it converged here. They had died so she could live fully into this role, and she understood now that their absence had been a form of protection, not abandonment. She had inherited purpose, clarity, and responsibility, the very gifts they had intended for her all along. Mara turned, stepping back through the portal, leaving the device and its lattice stable, secure, and alive. The corridor of energy shimmered and folded behind her as if breathing, adjusting itself to her absence without collapsing. She reached the freighter's main corridor, feeling gravity normalize and the familiar hum of the ship settle into the background. The air smelled faintly metallic, comforting in its familiarity. She paused at the sealed door she had opened, the threshold between what had been hidden and what she now understood. Her fingers brushed the edge one final time, and she whispered softly, "Thank you." The portal responded with a subtle pulse, a final acknowledgement of her comprehension, her care, and her promise. Mara walked through the freighter alone, feeling the weight of her inheritance yet unburdened, secure in her connection to the portal and the device. The Kestrel's wake was empty, silent, but no longer a vessel of mystery, it was a monument to her parents' sacrifice, their foresight, and her own courage. She would leave it protected, the secret contained, yet alive for the future. Finally, she reached the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, bright and infinite. Mara's gaze lingered on the expanse of space, the freighter drifting silently in orbit, and she allowed herself a moment of peace. She had faced the unknown, uncovered the truth, and safeguarded a legacy that spanned centuries. Her parents' voices echoed in memory, gentle and proud. Mara smiled, a sense of calm settling over her. She had fulfilled her inheritance, honored their sacrifice, and preserved the secret. The portal, the device, the lattice, they were safe, alive, and waiting. And Mara, finally, could step into her own life, knowing she was ready for whatever came next. She turned away from the viewport, leaving the freighter behind, yet carrying its secret within her. The hum of the portal faded softly in her mind, a heartbeat she would always remember. The journey of discovery, protection, and understanding had reached its first conclusion, and Mara walked forward into the infinite expanse of space, the guardian of a secret older than humanity itself, and the heir to a legacy of sacrifice, courage, and knowledge.